two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up the other. But woe to one who is alone and falls, and does not have another to help. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though one might prevail against another, two will withstand one. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Better is a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king, who will no longer take advice. One can indeed come out of prison to reign, even though born poor in the kingdom. I saw all the living who move about under the sun follow that youth who replaced the king. There was no end to all those people whom he led. Yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and chasing after wind. This passage contains another one that is very popular to use at big moments of life change. So the last one we had a couple lessons ago, we had the turn every time there is a season passage. And that one's very popular to use at funerals and other major life events. This scripture, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. I can't tell you how many weddings I've heard that at, and how many pastors I've heard talk about that it is a man and a wife coming together and God is the third person, and you know, that makes the relationship strong, and that is all not true. What I should say is that is not a biblically accurate interpretation of this scripture passage. It's not that it's not true, and for me, I want to use this as a window into explaining some things about preaching. Sometimes when we preach, or pastors preach, we use the scripture as a jumping point to teach a good lesson. That's what that type of meditation is. A man and a wife come together to be married, and God is the third partner in that relationship, and that will form a strong family bond. Is that false? No, it's true, but that's not what that scripture is saying. This scripture is more reflective of community. Now you can argue, well, isn't a marriage relationship about community? It kind of is. But again, this scripture passage is related directly to being in relationship with one another is very important. In verse 9, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. In other words, for Koheleth, being in relationship with others in a community provides a strength for you to go forward. And that's why he launches into talking about a king. So that the foolish king doesn't take advice. In other words, the foolish king is acting of his own impulses, while the young man who comes out of prison apparently gained a following, created a community around himself. And that's why he becomes king. Of course, being Koheleth, he reminds us that at the end of the day, that young man's going to have people turn against him because he probably at some point won't continue to build that community. But this is very important for us to remember, you know, who do we rely on in our lives? Who are we in community with? I can't tell you how many people I've met who are quite literally on their own. And it's a scary place to be when you have to provide for yourself and you can't provide for yourself. In order to be in those types of relationships, we have to be intentional. And I think that's what the king and the young man's story reflects us on, is one wasn't intentional about community and one was not. So where are you intentional in your relationships? Who are you cultivating relationships with? Yes, your spouses, if you're married, your spouse is an important one to cultivate a relationship with, but there are others around you, family members, who are your friends. What's your church relationship? What's your work relationship? Reflect on those things because it's important to know where you invest your energy. And you might be surprised. You might find you're not investing enough energy in a relationship you should. So maybe you need to make a phone call or something. Or perhaps you're investing too much energy in a relationship that's not reciprocal. And that relationship may either need to change or end. So take some time to journal, reflect, or converse about that topic.